Finland is quite far from America's Cup. Why the hell we are talking about America's Cup today?
Good question. Well, it is the oldest sporting event. Well, it's the oldest trophy in sailing. It's the oldest trophy in international sports. You know, the first it all started back in 1851, and there is no other trophy and no other event which has survived for as long. Then you look at it, you know, thanks to the Americans, it was always in Newport for 132 years, and then the Aussies won, and it started going around. But how often do we Europeans have the chance to be at the America's Cup? Well, in the close to 180 years, this year it is the third time. So statistically, every 60 years you have the chance. It's that special. And if you look at it, it has an enormous effect on our sport as a whole. You know, the boats used to be incredibly beautiful. Now they are incredibly fast. But it's a super important part of our sport.
And our first speaker will be all about America's Cup, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I don't know, there may be one or two people who are not fully filled in who is Dawn Riley, but we are super stoked to have her here. And for you who may not know, Dawn Riley, she did 2 Whitbreads around the world, and then for America's Cup, she won the America's Cup in 1992 with Buddy Melges. She's multiple world champion in multiple keel boats. She was president of the female woman I'm one-track mind, I say wooden, but it's woman. Female woman sports federation. Female sailor of the year. It goes on and on and on. And like what for me is outstanding is that Dawn is a true pioneer of the America's Cup and of the sport. If you think about it, back in statistics, in the close to 180 years that we had an America's Cup, there's only 5 women who sailed for the Cup. 5. Just over 2,000 men. And out of the 5 women that sailed an America's Cup match, 4 of them, one was checking the time and looking after the monkey they had on board called Peggy, and the other were basically timekeepers. There's only in the entire history from 1851 to 2024, there's only 1 woman who actually pulled a rope, had an active, serious, heavy-duty job and a key role on a winning America's Cup boat. And then I started to figure out, you know, why on earth, what's wrong on planet Earth here? And you do some statistics and you figure out, okay, how many females? So we have 4 America's Cup matches from the Americans to defend the Cup, where they had a woman on board, and every single time they won the Cup. 100% score. And it brings me to the opening question for Dawn Riley, and she's the only person on planet Earth who has, only woman on planet Earth who has sailed and won the America's Cup. So if that's the score, Dawn, why on earth do we need a woman's America's Cup?
Here we go. So green.
Okay. We don't need a separate women's America's Cup. We need to have women on the teams in the America's Cup. So also, I just want to point out that I'm not sure that that boat that was up there will ever be a classic boat. Now, I'm sure the people with the 12 meters said the same thing at some point, so we'll see, but I think on this one I might be correct. So, as John said, I've done 4 America's Cups, 2 around the worlds. This group has given me 25 minutes to tell y'all how to win the America's Cup. So that's probably not going to happen. I am going to show you a video. I'm going to try to talk as fast as I can and let you understand me, so we'll have some time for question and answer, but if not, I'm around until tomorrow at 6:50 a.m. So why did you ask me to be here? I've only won one team, and I've spent 20 years trying to win it again. So I guess it's because I have a lot of practice. In 1992, I was the nipper. I was young. I was one of the boys. We had fist fights and wrestling matches, and it was incredibly fun. In 1995, I was the captain of the all-women's team. I wrote the business plan, the manifesto, we called it for that, and then I was on the team as the team captain. Just going to say that the men organized the women's team except for me. And that's the beginning of the problem, which brings us to the solution in the end. And then I put together my own team as the CEO in 2000 to do a mixed team in Auckland, New Zealand. And I'm going to get to that because that was absolutely the best combination, and we were giant killers. And then after a brief stint advising the French and being the general manager and sailing on the boat, not at the end, but in the warm-up with Areva in 2007, I now run a place called Oakcliff Sailing. So oak tree on a cliff, we have trainees that are called acorns, the little seeds that grow into saplings that then become mighty oaks. Well, I called them mighty oaks, and they say, can you please just call us graduates? So we have graduates, many of which are working with the professional teams out there. I also raced around the world twice, the first time with Maiden, there's a film, and the second time I'm an expert at how to sail a boat without a rudder, because we lost the rudder 3 times on a boat called Heineken, and like I said, there had been a mutiny. So I just have a brief video that shows those just to wake you all up, but you guys seem pretty awake. Okay, I'm clicking the green. Can you guys click up there? Somebody speak Finnish? I can tell you the whole speech without this. Okay. We'll wait on the video. And yes? No? I get the 1 second. So I went ice boating. It was freaking awesome. I grew up in Detroit where we had a Arrow, so a 2-person ice boat, and somehow my dad convinced us that the kids had to push. That was the job of the children. So he would get in the boat and we would push, and then he would go sailing. Okay, it looks like we have video. If you guys want to press the button again and get it going, there we go. So this is 4 minutes of 10 years of my career. Obviously, we had Whitbread was the sponsor. That's a beer. Heineken was the sponsor of the second round of the world race, so there was a lot of beer being consumed. I was also engaged to a Kiwi who was on Steinlager, so even more beer being consumed. In 1989, the Fergie was our royal patron. It was the 80s, so everything was pink, and the world was pink, and we sailed around the world. They thought we were going to cry and come home. We ended up second. Sailing the America's Cup boats, big step up, so much fun, so much power. This was a fleet race in San Diego. I was the only girl in 92. That was sailing into Fort Lauderdale in our bathing suits, but I preferred dancing in foul weather gear in the Southern Ocean. Both boats around the world were 60 feet. The America's Cup boats were around 80 feet. You go a little bit crazy when you're stuck on a boat for 9 months with 11 other women. And we had a lot of good coaches, John Coleus, Dave Dellenbaugh, Buddy Melges. You probably don't know all those names, but Buddy Melges is a hero. Spinnakers were 5,000 square feet. We'd get them up or down in 13 seconds, and nowadays that's slow. San Diego had big waves. Everybody thinks it's a beach and bikinis, but there's some pretty big waves out there. And for match racing, these beasts were amazing, but nothing beats the Southern Ocean with going out to the end of the boom and the 30, 40-foot waves. That is a broach, tilt your head. That might have been me steering. That is Dennis Conner. We don't like him. We're not so hot on Paul Caird at the moment either. But Tom Whidden's a nice guy. from the top of the mast. I think they were like 70 feet. That was a 30-foot wave. The 93 were the first times we go over the waves like power boats and hopefully not run into the icebergs. Kaori had a safety harness on. Dennis Conner lost a $500,000 mast. The French dropped their boat. The next day their keel fell off. I don't know why. And then the Australians were the only boat to sink during an America's Cup race. Back to the beer. The sponsors had ads all the way across the country the next day. Nothing goes down better than a Foster's. We were the women's team in front, and the New York Yacht Club painted their boat to look like a woman, but they were behind us until the very end. We did not hike with our ankles crossed. That was for a Yoplait photo shoot. Both boats on the Whitbread, again, were 60 feet, and they say that you go downwind all the way around the world, and they lie. There was a fair amount of upwind sailing. Those were high-tech graphics in the 90s. Minnie Mouse. Gloria got some kelp off of the rudder. We gave her dish soap to wash her hair. You don't shower for a month at a time. Anybody who's sailing with an S sail, you put your head on the other side of the pole. Susie ended up with 6 stitches, and she did that twice. She's still proud of the scars. And this is sailing into Auckland, New Zealand. Yes, Hamish, this is one of my favorite places to sail and live in the world. So I said I have 25 minutes, and I've already taken up 20 minutes of that. So how do we win the America's Cup? There's a couple of sayings that I've heard people say, and at least one was attributed to Dennis Conner. And he said, I wake up every morning thinking, how is somebody trying to screw me, and how am I trying to screw them? So it is a morning to sleep mission to try to figure out how to be competitive in this game. It is all consuming. There is another very wise person that I don't know who said it, but the America's Cup is a very long series of meetings interrupted by the occasional sailboat race. That is very true. Because unlike most sailing events, this is the equivalent of a startup. So you are going to market in a very competitive market. So you have 6 to 8 to 10 teams trying to do exactly the same thing. The clock starts when the protocol comes out and the design comes out. You have your very small team of designers, a couple of key people, not always your superstar, rock star, Paul Caird type name, but some really smart sailors and a successful team, a really smart design team. You have to get money, so you need a little bit of seed money, and you need a good story, a good mission. So what is your mission? In the teams that I was in, women was obviously a part of that, but that was not all of it. When you start to get your money and you get your team together, then you have to have meetings, and you have to brainstorm, and you have to change your mind and open your mind and come up with any possible solution. You have to be innovative, and you have to be secret. It's an advantage to be, not me, but a cute female on a team with guys on all the other teams. Because there is something called sleeping with the enemy, and you can get information from the other teams. So then, eventually, you're moving forward. You've got your idea, your marketing, your design. Then you start building your team. You start adding more sailors. You start training. And then all of a sudden, everybody who's put together a team, boom, time to go racing. So you have a finite end. It's one of the most amazing things that I've been a part of, more than the round the world race, because all the way up until the racing, and then sometimes in between the rounds, you are able to continue to innovate. We should change the bulb tonight. Oh yeah, let's take that 30,000-pound hunk of lead off and put another one on. Not a problem. So when I talk about the mission, what was unique? In the different teams, there were different things. Obviously, on the women's team, that was the thing. We were America Cube, the women's team. In Bill Koch, when we won, it was really about the technology because it was the beginning of a cycle, so we could do anything. We bought one boat from the French, we copied a boat from the Italians, and we screwed that one up. So then we had to build 3 more boats. So we had 5 boats in our stable, which is insane, because you put those in and out every single night, the ones that you're sailing. And we had this horrible song, Teamwork, Technology, Talent and Technology, which I cannot sing, and you're lucky, because it's a horrible song that sticks in your head. But those were the 2 things. With America True, which was the co-ed team, we were knowing that we were going to be the underdog. We knew that we were going to do a mixed team, and all we did to make it mixed was say, let's consciously say, are we saying yes or no because they are male or female? Because you can't do blind hiring because we know each other, right? And we were able to pull together a really unique team. And one of the most unique things we did was we hired Phil Keiko as our designer. Phil Keiko was one of the lead designers on the boat that sank. And then we hired him. He was our design team lead and designer. And the day that I walked in and said with the marketing team, look, we have the graphics for the new boat, and it was yellow, he almost started crying. He's like, a yellow submarine? Really? I was like, Phil, it's okay, it's okay. And I would get the question from sponsors, why did you hire that person? Or from other teams. I said, because I know Phil, I've known Phil from the 90s, and I know that he woke up every single night, 2 or 3 times a night, his wife confirmed it, to think about how to make a boat that was stronger, faster, and lighter. So he was obsessed with it, and that boat was one of the 2 boats in my life that I've stepped on the first day of sailing. I just went, oh, yes, this boat is fast. It just had a different movement about it. It felt solid. It was just slicing through the water. Of course, he was still nervous, so it took him a while before he figured it out. But we were able to go into that campaign being the giant killers. We ended up winning the last race of the round robins to qualify for the semifinals with 1 day to spare. We didn't have to race our last race. Granted, we were racing against the Japanese that John Cutler used to work for, and Peter Gilmore, and there was 3 holes in our boat, but we won the protests. So we ended up winning and going into the semifinals, and then in the semifinals we made one decision that I don't have time to get into, but basically we were a little too casual. We didn't argue about the decision, and we made the boat geared for light air, and it was windy. There's another thing. We didn't have a lot of money. And the team that has won has never been the one with the most money. It is so much more important to use all of these things like limited resources, limited time, creative people, new people, diverse thinking, diverse people to be able to put together a team that can win. This team had the most money and did not win. This, if you didn't watch, was American Magic, and they went up, and they came down, and they started to sink. They basically hit the water, and in between the frames, the hull blew out. Because you guys, you're all sailors, well, even classic sailors, probably it's similar. The ring frames and the longitudinals and those are the skeleton that holds the boat together, and then the planks or the panels are really just to keep the water out and add a little bit of stiffness. So that just boomed straight out. I have talked to them at length to come up, and Terry's a friend, and I have 5 of my graduates on the team. The biggest thing for them, so this is how not to win the America's Cup. The biggest thing for them is they had plenty of money, they had unconditional support from their board, Doug DeVos and Hap Foth and Roger Penske. They had a very strong leader in Terry Hutchison, who was surrounded by coaches and people and sailors in his core team that he knew, and they had been loyal to him for 20 years, and they had been successful in the FAR 40s and the TP52s. They did not have any disruptors. They were so good that when they went the day before the first racing, they were doing circling on foils. And I saw it on YouTube and I was like, oh, wow, they've checked off everything on their list. And I went, oh, I hope they actually checked off everything. And they hadn't, because they hadn't put the team under pressure. I said earlier that time, I might have said earlier, time is actually the most important thing because you can't buy time. So in My America's Cups, we always said, if you use, and this kind of goes true for any business, right? If you use FedEx, you have failed. Because that means that you haven't planned far enough in advance to get to the point where you can order the part or get the thing in process so you can do it in a nice order. These guys had to use a Russian plane to get their spare boat down to New Zealand. So in this case, you could say, well, money helped because it bought time. I talked to the insurance company, they paid for it. They weren't super happy about it. But if you're going to do well in an America's Cup, in a challenge, in a business, you need to allow for the zigs and the zags. There are the people on your team, in an America's Cup team or in a yacht club, that you don't even know why they're there sometimes, and then they make you laugh and you remember why. They reduce the stress, or they ask a question. They might ask 20,000 questions and you're like, yeah. Oh, that one's good. So that is where it ends up, that you need to have a team that is creative, under pressure, passionate, and as there's a French Formula One guy said, he goes, I don't want to see the people on the top of the hills, I want to see the hairs on the tops of the heads of the people trying to get to the hills. So if you can find those people in an America's Cup team, you are going to be successful. We had, with America True, which is my favorite team, innovative from the beginning in the PR and marketing. You have to tell your story to be able to be your story. We did blogging when it wasn't even called blogging. We were updating our website, and it was blogging. We had a very limited pool of people. We did open tryouts. We literally went to boat shows around the country and tried people out, and one of our grinders ended up from that tryout, and then his name was Carl Barkow, and then his sister was named Sally Barkow, and she was 13 at the time, and she ended up going to the Olympics. And now she's with US Sailing. And the one thing that I can guarantee you we did not have is too much money, because I put the first half of the entry fee on my visa. So it was very much a personal thing. The other thing is that we had every single person be part of our team. Wet sanding was literally a full team effort. And none of the other teams did it quite as well as we did. Like if there was a volunteer on site, we're like, here's a Tyvek suit, this is sandpaper, help us wet sand. We also, in these days, we were doing two-boat testing, which they don't do nowadays, and you'd go out, because the computers have gotten so good, sometimes you wonder if they need to do two-boat testing. But anyway, we go out, so you have 2 teams of 17, which is a lot of people. Most people would have 50 people on their sailing team. We had 20. So how did we end up doing two-boat testing? The photographer, the bookkeeper, the PR person would rotate in, generally on mid-bow or in grinding, which made it really hilarious when we had a 5'2" photographer, female, at the bar talking to these monstrosities going, yeah, I'm a grinder too. So she might have gotten a few dates that way. Again, Phil built a boat that did not break. The conditions in New Zealand, actually maybe American Magic should have watched the footage from 2000, because the conditions in New Zealand, there's one race that I came in, I'm digressing from my speech, but basically we made a rule, all of us together, all of the challengers, and we said that we will not race when the wind is over, I think it was 23 knots, for a sustained period of 5 minutes. The problem was the anemometer was on the top of the race committee boat that was doing this. So it'd rock, it'd be like, and our top of our mast is like 30, and it's rocking, and then it would pause, and it would go down to 6. And then, because again, they're like, nope, got to keep going. We sailed in over 30 knots in these boats. It was insane. The day that we ended up eliminating, was that Japanese? I think we eliminated the Japanese in that, was 38 knots. How's my timing? Yeah, this is worth it. So it's over 30 knots, and we're in the starting sequence, and we're doing, you guys are all match racers, so I love this in Scandinavia. So we're doing a circle, and the Japanese, Peter Gilmore, Hollywood it and say that we didn't get around, so we have a penalty. And we know that this is a super important race, on top of the fact that Peter Gilmore had kicked John Cutler off on the previous team, so there was a personal grudge going on. So then you're doing the pre-start, and then the Japanese are early at the boat, and they'd come down, and John sees the opportunity to come in between the boat and the other competitor. And the Japanese go head to wind to try to shut the door. And I'm looking up and I'm screaming, $500,000, $500,000. As our masts touch, our wind instruments go down the mainsail of a Japanese boat. And I didn't know the Japanese knew this. And they're screaming at us. And so then we got the second penalty. So we had to do the penalty. And when it's 30 knots, have you tried to jibe an IACC boat? Even an 8-meter in 30 knots. Try to jibe it quickly. So we go down, we sail like, it felt like a mile past the start line before we could go back up. We get up, but all we did is mentally piss off Peter Gilmore. So we would put our boat on his hip, where he couldn't see us without turning around. Because we knew, I'm sorry if anybody likes Peter, we knew that he didn't trust his team, and he kept looking over his shoulder. And then he would tack, and we would tack, and we just kept positioning ourselves, and we ended up at the second top mark. We got a piece of him, and then we had a luffing match, so we offset the second penalty. Then we got a little aggressive because he was still ahead of us, and then we got a penalty. And then he came at us again, and we were luffing him. We were in front of him, we were luffing him, and the rule where you have to give one opportunity for the spinnaker to be taken down was new, and he was trying to use that as an offensive tool, like throwing his spinnaker on us because he knew we were going to be in front of him, and instead they threw their spinnaker in the water. So then we just sailed by, and we ended up winning that race. That was awesome. I want the video of that. So, anyway, so the point was, those kinds of teams that just work together are insanely powerful, and that is what I'm trying to capture and take forward with what I'm doing with America True. When we finally were eliminated, we had an insane party. We flew this spinnaker on the way in to thank all of the people who were, I've got 1 minute, damn it. All the people who were helping us throughout the program, and we had community sailing programs that we had set up. Over 28 clubs and 30 programs are still going on with us, and now those graduates are coming to a place called Oakcliff Sailing, where we, and I'm going to talk about that later, where we race with young, diverse teams on boats like a 12-meter, on boats like OC86, on Swedish Match 40s, Pelle Pettersson, and we are able to connect the dots from yacht clubs to community sailing, from the inner cities into the beautiful, courageous 12-meter. The final thing, because I have red here telling me I'm over, so I want to point out one thing. The question that you started with, do we need a Women's America's Cup? No, we do not. And there's two people on this screen in particular. Sarah Stone is a graduate of mine, and she is phenomenal. She's a boat captain for Quantum Racing, TP52s in America and in Europe, and Anna Weiss, who was supposed to be sailing with Sail GP, but if you didn't watch, the Dolphins canceled the racing, and she's the first female that's going to be a grinder on Sail GP. Those two in particular should be on the real team, not the women and children's team. Now, I do know that there is a place for the women and children's teams, but not with American Magic. Those two women should be up and the other one should be training. Oh, I'm only 1 minute over. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
As a thank you, we would love to give you Tapani Koskela's great story about the classic boats and especially the Ture Holm and of course the Esther, which is the great story of from the Sweden. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. No, Hamish.